Okay, so the second thing I want to show you, which is what I actually wind up using the most, is bringing in a JPEG and modifying that, tracing it and modifying that. So let me show you how you would do that. Alright, so I have, let's see, I have a tribal tattoo decoration in a JPEG. Now, typically you want a black and white image. That's not always easy to get, right? So this image happens to be on a blue background and it's kind of a dark gray. There are some settings in Silhouette Studio that lets us kind of manipulate the picture. There's this little low resolution warning, right? This is, you can see it's kind of pixelated, but we're not going to notice that when we trace it. Now if it was extremely pixelated, that would be a problem, but this isn't too bad. Not too bad at all. So the first thing that I want to do is I want to make this as close to black and white image as I can. So there is a image effects panel that's available. Looks like you know, a little contrast button, and you can kind of play around with these settings. The grayscale, if we use that and we use the slider, that's gonna change that blue color a little more on the gray side, so we can apply that. And then, you know, just go through. We don't want to colorize it. There's this contrast, brightness, and saturation. So this one's going to be important. So let's see if we can make that. Okay, so that's a little more white. We don't want to take it all the way over. We just want to take it over till we have a white background. And then we can bump up our contrast. Bingo. Now we have a black and white image, and we can apply that. So this is going to be much better for the software to use and see the edges when it does its tracing operation. So now we've got our image. Now we have it in black and white. It's a pretty clean image. There's no extra stuff around it, so it should be pretty easy to trace. So now we need to open the trace panel, which I guess it's a butterfly maybe, but to me it looks like a sandwich. Maybe I'm hungry, I don't know. Alright, so we can use our select trace area first to select the area that we need to trace. It's pretty self-explanatory. So select that, we get these little crosshairs, and we want to make sure we get the entire image in the trace area. So we make our selection, and it puts yellow in all of those dark areas. So it's determining where to trace that image. The threshold allows us to bump it up so that we get more of the image in the trace area. The more you bump up that threshold, the more rounded out these sharp corners will become. So this is actually a good trace. It looks clean to me. The points are very sharp. So I'm really happy with this selection. So I'm going to go ahead and hit trace the entire image. Now there's different options here. You can trace the entire image, you can trace just the outer edge, or you can trace and detach. I typically just use the trace feature. So when we click trace, that selection image goes away, or selection area goes away, and you can see a red outline around your image. So we can select our original image and just move it out of the way. And now we've got a traced image to work with. At this point, you can come in here and do some editing if you're not happy with the image. Maybe you think it's too busy and you want to get rid of some areas. So let's just zoom in and I'll show you what I'm talking about. So let's see. Let's find one of these smaller areas. So let's say this little section here you aren't happy with and you want to get rid of it. Well, the first thing, when you select the image, it's just one image. There's not a bunch of little images making it up like the SVG file was when we brought it in, or rather the DXF file. So we need to actually release all those compound paths so that each individual item becomes selectable. And we've got this image selected, so I'm going to go to Object, Release Compound Path, and now I've got a bunch of images in here that make up one big image, right? So I'm going to just click off of the image to deselect everything, and let's say I want to get rid of that little piece right there. I'll click that, and then I can just hit delete, or I can right click and delete and get rid of it. Cleans it up a little bit. So you can go through and do that type of work all through your piece. Alright, so we've gotten rid of that one little area. It's not going to make much of a difference, but I'm going to leave it deleted. And another thing I want to show you is you can actually refine your lines. So if you find an area of your image that you're not 100% happy with, you can make changes and make it look more like you want it to look. So let's say that this area in here is not exactly how we want it to look. So let's zoom in. It's always best to zoom in. You can get a better idea of what you're working with when you zoom in on your picture. Alright, so let's say I want this area to be a little more rounded and not quite so squared off. So if I select that particular piece of the image, that is really part of the overall design. I can then come in to edit points, and it's going to give me a bunch of little points. So where all these points are, the trace has created to create these lines, but these points are editable. So I can move them around, I can make them more rounded if I want to. Very powerful tool actually. So let's say I want this corner to be not so blunt. So if I click on that point, if I look up here in the upper left hand corner of the menu bar, I can see it highlights in blue this convert the selected nodes to corners. So that node is a corner node. And I can click the one next to it that will actually smooth that corner out. Alright, so if I select that, I should be able to, maybe. Alright, let's try to smooth it. There we go. We can smooth it. There's two different selections you can make. One usually works. It didn't work in this case, so I selected the selected node to a curve. Alright, so now I've got these little handles that I can then manipulate to make it more rounded. I can pull the handles out to also manipulate the shape. I can move points, so if I select that point, I can move it out. Alright, I can move this one over a little bit. And I can just play around with these shapes to make it whatever shape I want it to be. Alright, so when you're done editing, then you can simply just click outside of the shape to deselect it. You can even delete points, so there's not so many. Alright, so I made some changes, and let's just click away from it, and you know, it kind of rounded that out a little bit more. I'm not happy with that little bump there, so I'm going to go and select that again, go into edit points. I'm actually going to delete that particular point. See if that helped. So let's click off, and it straightened it out a little bit. I could probably do a lot more work to this, but it's going to be reduced in size, and you're never going to notice that there's any kind of waviness to that line at all. So that's some ways that you can modify your image using those points and editing those points, or deleting individual elements altogether. So I've made the changes that I wanted to make, and now I'm going to select all those images again, because now I want it to be back as one image, so that when I make changes to it, it applies it to everything. So I'm going to go into Object and Make Compound Path. So now I have one image to work with. I can resize it, do whatever I need to. So let's resize this. First, let's rotate this image, because I think I want to, I don't want it on that angle. So I just want to rotate it so I can kind of get a better view of it. All right, I like that. Let's put it there. So I want to make this smaller. I don't know exactly what size I want it. I'm going to grab a corner and I'm going to size it that way. So as long as you grab a corner, it's going to keep it proportional. If you grab one of the sides, it would then stretch that side out, and you would lose the proportion. Okay, so I'm going to pull this down a little bit more. All right, let's leave it at that for now, and let's zoom in. We can adjust sizing later. Okay. All right, so now I'm going to fill this just like I did with the SVG files that we had earlier. Same concept. So I'm going to go into my fill panel, and I'm going to fill this black, and I'm going to change the lines to black as well, so I can get a good idea of what this piece would look like. So I like that. I like the black, and I think that's what I would want etched into my piece. All right, so what I can do now is, let's say I wanted to maybe use this for a bracelet. I could start out with a rectangular shape. All right, and let's just see what we have here. All right, let's say I have a bracelet blank that's 6 inches wide. All right, so I want to resize my rectangle, so I know maybe I have a bracelet blank that's 6 inches wide and 1 inch high. All right, so I'm going to make the width, and I don't need to turn on that aspect ratio because I want to change both the width and the length of my rectangle. So width is going to be 6 inches. All right, that's better. And height is going to be 1 inch. That's better. That looks more like it. All right, so the first thing I want to do is I want to resize this image to fit within my shape. All right, so I'm showing you not only how you can edit your JPEG images that you bring in, but you can also create other elements as well. All right, so there's my shape. I think I may need to rotate it a bit more. All right, so there we go. There's our shape. And let's see how this looks. Object, align. I want to align this in the center and middle of the piece. All right, since this tattoo design is kind of off kilter a bit, like it's not weighted the same on each side, then I may want to move this over a little bit to make it more even. So let's just take this and move it over, and I'm just using my right arrow key just to kind of visually move it over. And if I click on my rectangle, this is the center point of my rectangle. All right, so I can kind of visually align it. And I think I'm almost there. I'm just gonna nudge it a little bit more till I like it visually. So I kind of like where that is. All right, so I think what I'm gonna do now is I'm going to take this image and I'm going to replicate it, but I'm gonna like replicate it, mirror it, kind of flip it over. So there's some tools that allow you to do that. So I have this image selected. I'm going to go up to Object and Mirror. Actually, I'm going to replicate, and then I want to mirror to the right. All right, so it flipped my image for me. Okay, so that's kind of what I want, but I think what I really want to do is come in here and just rotate this image a bit like this, and then I can bring this in and kind of put it in a little closer to the piece. All right, I kind of like that. What do you guys think? I like that. All right, so now that I have that, let's see if we can do something similar on this side. And it might be a little trickier to get it because this one looks really good on this side, but let's try that again. So let's take this image, we're gonna go to Object, we're gonna replicate, and now we're going to mirror left. All right, so now we've got this image, and again, I want to rotate it so it's gonna kind of fit in. And see, this one's trickier because of this puppet here. I'm not happy with that. So let's see if I then flip this one, Object, or not replicate. I just simply want to mirror it horizontally and then rotate. Okay, so that might work. Let's just check it out. That's not too bad. So you can kind of see how you can replicate, mirror, manipulate, rotate to get an overall image that you might want. So here's my outline for my bracelet blank, and now I've got these items that I can use within the space. All right, so this just kind of gave me an idea of where that bracelet's going to be. So now let me show you what else we can do. We can use some modify tools to further refine our shape. All right, so I'm going to just make a copy of this rectangle. So I'm going to copy and paste. If I find it, there we go. And I'm just going to move this up out of the way. I don't want to lose that shape. But what I want to do is I want to use this rectangle to crop these two images. But first I'm going to take these three and I'm going to make them a compound path to make it one image. So now I'm going to use this image and then crop that image. Fingers crossed it works. Okay, so if we go to Object, Modify, we've got a bunch of different selections we can choose from. One of them being crop. So let's see if it works. So let's crop, and voila, it did. It cropped the image. What it did do is it got rid of our rectangle, which is why I made a copy of the rectangle and kept it above, but it cut off those pieces that extended beyond the bracelet blank, right? So now I can bring this back down, and if I just align everything, Object, a line. It's probably going to throw it off in the center. And see what else it did? It released that compound path. So, object, make compound path. And now we can bring this back down and align it. And because it's an odd shape, I can't just center it. So I'm kind of eyeballing it. And I think I can just nudge it a little. Okay. All right, I think that will do. So now what I can do is I can take my blank and create an internal offset to give myself a border. I just like borders. I don't know why. I just do. I think they look nice. And so I'm gonna select this offset panel, and I've already got that rectangle selected, so I'm going to say offset. And this one I can use a pretty good size offset. Well, actually, I want an internal offset, don't I? So scrap that. So let's select that rectangle again. Select an internal offset. There we go. That's what I'm looking for. Okay, so I'm going to make this larger, or smaller, I should say. Okay, so based on the line widths of the tattoo design itself, I'm going to use that size, 0.065, and I'm going to apply that. Alright, now this is kind of cool. What you can do here is, this is two different images. This is a rectangle and another rectangle on top of it. So let's say I filled this back rectangle with a color. I'll show you what I'm talking about. Let's make it black. Alright, so you can see the rectangle behind and then the rectangle in front, and there's, you know, it's two separate rectangles. Alright, so what I can do here is I can take this back rectangle and select the rectangle in front of it. If I can select it. You want to select the front one first and then the back one. And I just hold down the shift key. Alright, and I should have both selected. And I can go to Object, Modify, and then Subtract. And so what that does is it actually cuts a hole in that back rectangle, and now it becomes one image. So that's a pretty cool feature as well. Alright, so now that I have my single image rectangle, I'm actually going to give it a line color of black because I don't want the red. Alright, so that's a pretty, you know, cool little design, right? And I can make it, you know, a single image, or just group it and move it and stuff like that. So just some ideas of what you can do, not only with images that you bring in, but using the drawing tools, some of the things that you can do with those drawing tools. We could explore this object modify panel a little more. Let's give you an idea. So the other day I was making like moon phases, right? So easy to do. I'm going to start out by drawing a circle, just a plain circle. I'm going to use the shift key and hold that down while I draw the circle to keep it in proportion. So now I've got my circle. I'm just going to fill this circle in with black. Okay, so I've got a black circle, and let's say I want, so that's my full moon. Let's say I want to make a crescent moon. I'm going to create a copy of this. I want the same size. I'm going to copy and paste. All right, I've got two moon shapes. All right, I'm going to put them side by side. Let's select them both, and you know, every time I do something, it goes back to the selection tool. So I can easily just select my shapes with the selection tool, and I want to align them to make sure that they're evenly aligned across the top. All right, so Object, Align, Align, Top. All right, shifted that second one just ever so slightly. So now I've got these two images, and I can take this one and just, you know, with my left arrow key, kind of nudge it over to wherever I want my sliver to be cut out of my first moon, right? So now I've got these two images. I know they're aligned because I could have moved it with the mouse and then aligned it, but I didn't. That's why I just nudged it over so I didn't lose the top alignment. So now I can select both of those moons. I can go into Object and Modify, and I can use Subtract. So that's going to get rid of whatever that top image is. It's going to subtract it from the bottom. So that leaves me with my little moon sliver. Very easy to do, right? I'm going to undo that, and I'm going to show you what each of these modify options give you. So if I do a weld, it welds it into one piece. That little red line is gone. Now it's just one little piece, right? And I'm going to undo that. All right, and then let's see, modify, let's intersect. So by intersecting, whatever pieces are overlapping, it gets rid of everything else and just leaves that overlapping piece. So now we have a football. Okay, so if you ever wanted to make a football, there you go, easy. Okay, so let's undo that. Now let's look at, we've already looked at subtract. That's how we made our crescent moon. Crop is gonna give you similar to the intersecting, because it's just two images, and wherever they're wherever it intersected over the bottom image, that's what it's going to give you. All right, let's undo. Let's go back to Object, Modify, Subtract All. All right, looks like it didn't do anything. Looks like that red line just got a little darker, right? But now you can take these two pieces apart. So now you have the crescent moon and the full moon still there. All right, so we undid that, and if we divide, it's going to give us the same as the subtract all. So nothing much different there. All right, one more, and then if we detach lines, we get not only our two moons, but we also get the lines. So now the lines are no longer around the original pieces, they're separated. So that could be useful as well. Okay, so that's all of the modify options. I use the modify menu a lot, a whole lot. It gives me a lot of flexibility, and you can really create some interesting designs with just drawing basic shapes and using the modify tools. So keep that in mind. All right, so let's just get rid of that. One other thing I do want to show you, which is pretty cool, and I do need to make a note of this too. You can do text. I use text all the time. I get a lot of custom orders where someone wants a specific text included on their piece. It might even be, you know, an inside inscription that says "Love Mom." You know, it can be so simple like that, and easy enough to do. There is a text tool in here, and you can just You can just type whatever you know you need to. Love Mom, right? It's huge. The default is Arial 72. We can easily take care of that. Let's first make this text black. I apologize if I'm all over the place, but I'm all over the place when I'm creating, so that's why. We're going to make that fill black, and we're going to go ahead and make the line black as well. So there we go. So now we have our text. It's still selected. So we can change the size. So let's change this to, I don't know, a 12. All right. Let's change the font too. I'm not a fan of Arial. I mean, it has its place, but sometimes I just want something with a little more flair, right? So here's Love Mom. And we could just add this like right here, Love Mom. No problem. One of the cool things that you can do with text is that you can wrap it around a shape. Let me just demonstrate. So I'm just going to draw an oval. Just a simple oval, all right? And let's move this text down. All right, so if we double click this, we get this little handle in the corner. And if we bring that handle down over our shape, it snaps to it. And it transforms the text to wrap around the shape. And you've got this little slider here too, so you can kind of move how far away from the shape it is. If you want it on the line, inside the line, outside the line, you've got a lot of different options that are available. So that's a really neat, nifty little trick that you can do. So I just wanted to make sure that I showed you that. And this video is getting entirely too long, so I want to wrap this up. I do want to tell you though, if you're going to use text, or if you're printing out something that is not proportionate on both sides, you need it to be a particular, facing a particular direction, you need to flip your image. So for instance, if I need this and I need to print it out on the glossy magazine paper as a toner resist, I need to mirror that image. So I can select that image, object, and mirror and flip horizontally. So it's going to read backwards to you when you print it out, but that is correct. And when you transfer it to your metal, then it's going to be right side up. So don't forget to do that. Very important step. You will be mad at yourself when you put that on your metal. I've done it more than once. You would think that I would have learned my lesson by now, but I still do it from time to time when I get in a big hurry. So make sure you flip your text or any images that you need oriented in a certain direction. You need to flip that too. Something that's the same and it's not going to matter, you don't have to flip it. I think we've covered a lot, and I can certainly do more episodes. There's so much to cover. It's so hard to cover everything. If you have questions, let me know. It kind of gives me an idea of what content I should cover next, or if anyone's even interested in seeing more content about this. But hopefully you have gotten something out of this, and maybe when I get my portrait in a couple of days, since I'm returning it, I will show you that setup, how I set that up, how that Bluetooth is working, and cut something in vinyl and show you how that works. So thank you for joining. Sorry I rambled on so much, but had a lot to cover. If you like this content, please subscribe, please like, comment, share with others, feel free, and I hope to see you in the next one. Bye.